I'm a great believer that artists should never apologize for their art.
Comedy is a tricky business. It thrives on making people laugh, but in doing so, it often pokes at the things we hold dear, the things we argue about, or the things we'd rather not admit. Rowan Atkinson takes us on a journey through the state of comedy today, its purpose, and its ever-changing role in a world that seems to take offense at the drop of a hat.
In a recent interview you gave with the Irish Times, you said, comedy's job is to offend, and it seems nowadays people are very careful about what they joke about. Do you worry about where comedy is going?
Not greatly, because it's a cyclical thing. You know, 1 minute, certain jokes or certain attitudes and outlooks are just out of fashion.
Atkinson starts with a simple yet bold statement. Comedy's job is to offend. Wait, what? Isn't comedy supposed to make people laugh? Well, yes, but he argues that laughter often comes from poking fun at things, questioning norms, and sometimes stepping on a few toes. After all, comedy has always been about holding up a mirror to society and making people laugh, even if that reflection isn't always flattering.
And in the end, the whole point of a joke is to entertain people. And if people are not entertained, then you haven't, fulfilled your brief.
But he's quick to clarify, comedy also needs to entertain. If no one's laughing, the joke has failed, plain and simple. Imagine a comedian delivering punchlines to a stone-faced audience. Awkward, right? Atkinson's point here is that jokes don't exist in a vacuum. They need to land with the audience. If they don't, well, maybe the comedian needs to rethink their material.
And so I'm a great believer that we must have free expression, and in comedy you must be able to make jokes about absolutely anything. I mean, the only question is you would be wise to choose a context in which it's going to be appreciated, because not all jokes suit all contexts. The joke you tell around a table in a restaurant with some friends is not necessarily something for primetime TV.
Next, Atkinson touches on how society changes its mind about what's funny. One day, a joke is hilarious. The next, it's problematic. Comedy, like fashion, goes through trends. He compares it to attitudes and outlooks that go in and out of style. What's okay to joke about today might be off limits tomorrow. But here's the kicker. Comedy always bounces back. Think of it like this. Skinny jeans were once the rage, then fell out of favor, and now they're creeping back. Similarly, certain types of jokes might be out now, but Atkinson is confident they'll circle back into the spotlight eventually. Comedy is cyclical, and audiences eventually find their way back to appreciating humor in all its forms. One of Atkinson's strongest beliefs is that comedians should have the freedom to joke about absolutely anything. Yes, anything. The key, however, is to know where and how to deliver those jokes. He points out that not all jokes are fit for every setting. For instance, that edgy joke you cracked with your friends at dinner, probably not suitable for a family-friendly TV show. This, he explains, is where comedians need to be smart. It's about understanding the context. Comedy isn't a one-size-fits-all game. A joke that kills in a packed comedy club might bomb on primetime television. Knowing your audience and the setting is crucial.
That's a pretty obvious statement, but you'd be surprised how people like to abuse the context of comedy. And people often say, did you hear that joke that comedian said in that Netflix special? Did you think that was right or wrong? And all I say is, I wasn't there. I haven't heard the joke. I wasn't in the audience when the comedian said it. I don't know what the atmosphere was in the room.
Atkinson also calls out people who take jokes out of context. The type who hear about a joke secondhand and immediately decide it's offensive without knowing the full story. Atkinson finds this absurd. He argues that if you weren't there when the joke was told, you can't fully judge it. After all, comedy is as much about the atmosphere as it is about the words. The mood in the room, the audience's energy, all these things matter.
If people pay to see a comedian, they've got to accept whatever they provide. I'm a great believer that artists should never apologize for their art. You put something out there, you paint a watercolor, you make a joke, you make a television show, whatever it is. If people are offended, that's their problem. It's not yours. You've done your bit.
Now here's where things get spicy. Atkinson firmly believes that artists, including comedians, should never apologize for their work. If a comedian tells a joke and someone doesn't like it, that's the audience's problem, not the comedian's. Harsh? Maybe. But his reasoning is simple. The comedian has done their job. They've created and delivered their art. Whether people love it or hate it is out of their hands. This doesn't mean comedians are immune to consequences. Atkinson admits that if a joke doesn't land well or offends too many people, the comedian might not get hired again. That's just how the industry works. But apologizing? No, he says that's unnecessary. Once you've put your work out there, it stands on its own. Think of it like painting a picture. If someone doesn't like your watercolor masterpiece, you're not going to repaint it to make them happy. The same goes for comedy. A joke is what it is, and it's up to the audience to decide how they feel about it.
Done your best, and it's up to the audience to judge. I'm a great believer that if a joke has an appreciative audience, no matter how small, no matter who they are, then it is worthy. It should be, as it were, allowed.
Atkinson shifts the spotlight to the audience and their role in the comedy equation. He believes audiences have a responsibility too. If someone pays to see a comedian perform, they need to accept whatever the comedian brings to the table. You wouldn't go to a sushi restaurant and complain that there's no pizza on the menu, right? He also makes an important point about judgment. If an audience finds a joke funny, even if it's a small niche group, then that joke has value. It deserves to exist. Comedy doesn't have to please everyone. A joke that resonates with a tiny crowd of 10 people is just as valid as one that brings down the house in a sold-out arena. And for those who get offended easily, Atkinson suggests they take a step back and realize that offense is subjective. What offends one person might be hilarious to another. So instead of demanding that comedians cater to everyone, maybe it's time for audiences to lighten up a bit. Finally, Atkinson drives home the idea that comedy, like all art, is subjective. Whether it's a joke, a painting, or a TV show, art is meant to evoke a reaction. Not everyone will love it, and that's okay. The point is that the artist, or in this case the comedian, has done their job by creating something. He emphasizes that comedians are not in the business of pleasing everyone. They're in the business of making people think, laugh, and sometimes squirm. If someone doesn't like a joke, they're free to criticize it or simply walk away. But demanding that a comedian change their material or apologize, that's a step too far. Atkinson's message is clear. Comedians need the freedom to explore any topic, audiences need to understand context, and everyone needs to accept that art is subjective. So the next time you hear a joke that makes you cringe, remember Atkinson's wisdom. Comedy isn't about playing it safe. It's about taking risks, making people laugh, and yes, sometimes making them uncomfortable. Because in the end, that's what makes comedy worth watching. If you found today's video as wild as we did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more unforgettable takes. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Until then, stay tuned, stay sharp, and we'll see you in the next one.